This project seeks to produce a variety of spaces through a limited versatility of forms. Folding will be deployed as a device across various scales as a slight deviation from typical housing types, but this slight deviation is one that goes a long way. By developing our unit types as versatile blocks, we were able to aggregate them into a series of buildings. The evolution of this initial set of buildings represents a sample of a greater kit of parts that can continue to populate rezoned sites along rail lines.
Our site is situated in Glendale, just north of downtown LA, 1 metro stop away from Union Station, downtown Burbank, and 2 stops away from Burbank Airport. The LA River just west of the site is only a 15-minute walk away, running along the 5 freeway. In dealing with rail lines, which we consider inherent boundaries that divide the city, we are confronting and breaking down those boundaries as we know them to better connect communities across these lines and make metro stations more accessible to both sides. 3 main roads house both LA and Glendale bus routes within walking distance. 2 of these roads are the only paths that bridge across these tracks. What is currently a 14-minute walk around tracks and under a bridge should be a 3-minute direct walk. The rail line, or border as it were, also acts as an edge between 2 city limits, LA and Glendale, which emphasizes this separation. These outskirts of a city tend to be zoned for industrial spaces, but what are the implications in a city like LA where city edges meet city edges? In our case, this zone is currently occupied by rows of storage units that reinforce the impermeability along this half-mile stretch of land. That is to say, relative to rail lines, how do we resolve the problem of the perpendicular, where do you cross, and the problem of the immediate parallel, what is the buffer?
As structures like the storage units become obsolete and demand for more and affordable housing increases, housing is able to grow and take over those spaces. That being said, our project does not tiptoe over existing houses, but rather reclaims these industrial spaces and acts as a stitch between closed-off neighborhoods that are primarily accessed by vehicles and the nearby metro stations. The Dutch are famous for reclaiming land where it meets water. Let's call this lateral reclamation. And the 1909 theorem introduces the same concept, but vertically, reclaiming airspace as new grounds. But why stop there? By taking 2 typical housing topologies, the tower and the bar building, and allowing them to push outwards, expanding the building perimeter, new space emerges within. This new core becomes an opportunity to improve the quality of each apartment unit while simultaneously housing shared spaces for the residents.
As it is up to architects to design for a more sustainable future, we turn to wood as a building material that is renewable, more readily available, and sequesters carbon. Understanding the capabilities of cross-laminated timber and mass-produced plywood places us in a world of deep beams that begin to challenge us to work with the low floor-to-floor heights and housing typologies, especially when it comes to affordable housing, where buildings often work with the absolute minimum dimensions to increase the quantity of units. We begin to consider how these members come together and understand the conventional orthogonal structural frame that emerges from this medium, and consider how we can move this forward. To push the limits of this medium, we turn to the study of polyhedra, whose composition is less limited to an orthogonal framework while maintaining its geometric logic. This research leads us to the octohemioctahedron. With its peculiarity as a distinct family of polyhedra, which is in fact composed of 3 extremely regular geometries, hexagonal planes, pyramids, and triangular pyramids, the set of polyhedra are all built from a single framework. That is to say, that while each of these objects are drawn with the same lines, the planes that materialize about those lines produce different spaces and readings of the object, at some times claiming space to their interior and at other times leaving them out. These pockets illustrate an architectural trope of blurred lines between inside and outside. This limited variation of objects within a single framework was a big part of the inspiration behind the approach to this work.
The apartment units can be thought of as a thickened occupiable line that loosely encloses a secondary zone. The central space works hand in hand with an ambition to push forward the aggregation of micro-modular units. This allows for more affordable modules and a higher quantity, where shared space becomes a catalyst for bringing residents together, where at-home offices become collaborative work environments and cascading towers allow for visual connectivity. To achieve this, 2 unit types are designed, a lofted unit and a micro single-level unit. One utilizes lofted space for a smaller footprint, and the other utilizes operable furniture to maximize the flexibility in its limited footprint. Lofted microunits have an inherent steep stair that is utilized as a building block for the sloping. Both share the same organizational grid, which is a 4.5 meter square. The lofted unit is a co-living space with a shared kitchen and bathroom, while the micro unit uses an operable storage unit composed of a Murphy bed and table to create multiple spaces within the smaller unit. These themes are scaled up and considered as a unit stacks up to become a building. In designing housing for sloped geometries and confronting the issue of lost space, or rather inefficient space beneath the slope, we utilize these formal qualities to branch outwards. The striation of the wood facade is meant to accentuate the directionality of each bay. Painting the wood controls the noise of any grain for the material to read more as a series of vertical lines. While the folding is apparent at the macro level through the building block's outward movement, on a micro scale, folding is implemented through facade to reveal aperture and break down certain long stretches of a continuous surface. As the exterior wall folds out and in, additional inhabitable space is reclaimed by the interior along an otherwise less functional regular slope.
Using these unit types, we're able to produce a variety of form while maintaining the economy of a repetitive block. The new typical tower expands from its center, introducing cross-ventilation and natural light to its core, elements otherwise foreign to the normative tower typology. Within, glimpses between various floor plates afford residents the ability to visually connect with their neighbors. It also combats the typical procession where one transverses through a foyer to an elevator and then hallway. Instead, openness is introduced to this process. This open circulation becomes a place for social exchange and activities across the atrium. While not completely awash with light, we consider Beaufield's Walden 7, which has many constantly shaded sections of its atrium. It in no way is ashamed of dark corners, but rather embraces this quality through the cool tonality of its painted atrium walls. The new typical bar building folds out carrying many of the same themes from the previous tower, but the character of course is different. The shared space in this building is more aligned, growing out of the central void created by the apartments folding away, arranged in a pattern that produces an alternating literal and phenomenal transparency through its widened, program-embedded corridor. And again, the A building is yet another arrangement, but while these arrangements of blocks may seem derivative of one another, it is better to think of them as a family of objects that are really just trying to address the ground in a variety of ways. Later on, we will see the implications of this at the ground floor. Views out are framed as we look along the length of the building. Here, the building looks back on itself, or perhaps rather towards another member of its family of aggregations. All of these spaces in between spaces become a part of the distinct identity between a family of buildings that all seem to be one and the same.
In confronting the edge condition of the rail, with the residential neighborhood directly to the west sandwiching our site, we created a continuous aggregation of our building blocks running parallel. In an effort to stitch together the neighborhood with the edge opposite the tracks, a direct visual and physical path through the site to the train station is created. Through our already established kit of parts, a built landscape is designed running perpendicular to the tracks as a means to provide a transitional device. A series of plazas, marketplaces, as well as community garden planters and pavilions provide public green space and are a means for giving back to the neighborhood. Just as each planter is available to the neighborhood for community gardening, each unit is provided with a patio garden to compensate for the space lost with microliving. These spaces at the ground level oscillate between garden and park space, providing green in an otherwise desert landscape. The continuous aggregation across the site mirrors the continuity achieved at the ground level. Each building block, although a discrete object in itself, meets the ground in its own unique way. By providing a few different generic conditions for how these buildings meet the ground, we have more of an opportunity to interact with existing landmarks on the site. In section, we can clearly see the division between private, semi-public, and public space as a result of the outward push of our geometry. At the ground level, public space welcomes and serves the community, with a market hall located in the A building, produce processing in V, and bicycle storage in the tower. Towards the exterior, private housing units aggregate upwards, leaving the center of each building occupied by semi-public amenities, such as gyms, laundry rooms, workspace, and terraces. The movement of private program to the exterior of each floor opens up the space in the middle, lending itself to a series of bridges that reinforce the web of visual and physical connectivity across each level and support ample social spaces.
While here we have presented one aggregation of our building blocks, as we imagine the site to continue along the rail, the combinations are limitless. As zones similar to that of our site begin to open up and housing demands continue to rise, they must be addressed with these themes of connectivity and sustainability. Any convention of repetitive forms for the sake of economy of shape should be designed with some versatility to create even subtle diversity.